They say power is everything in Chicago, until someone threatens to take it from you. Adrian Volkov built an empire on fear and precision. He never lost control, never hesitated, never let anyone get close enough to matter. But when a terrified woman interrupted the most important deal of his career with a desperate lie, claiming to be his date to escape a dangerous ex, everything changed. One dance, one decision, and suddenly, the most dangerous man in the city had something to lose. Stay with me until the end. Hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The Velvet Room didn't advertise. It didn't need to. Tucked into the shadow of Michigan Avenue, behind an unmarked door and a doorman who knew every face that mattered, it existed for people who preferred their business conducted in low lighting and lower voices. Adrian Volkov sat in the corner booth, his booth, watching Marcus Delacroix sweat through his second whiskey. The older man's hands trembled as he signed the contract, and Adrian wondered, not for the first time, why people always acted surprised when their debts came due. "This squares us?" Marcus asked, his voice barely cutting through the jazz piano drifting from the stage. Adrian took a measured sip of his bourbon. "Your debt to the Kowalski crew, yes. Your debt to me is a separate conversation." Marcus's face went gray. "You said, I said I'd handle Kowalski, and I did. You're welcome." Adrian slid the signed contract into his jacket. "But you borrowed from them using my name as collateral. That has consequences." Thunder rattled the windows. Outside, rain hammered Chicago like it had a personal grudge. Perfect weather for closing deals that required discretion. "I didn't mean, I never said, you implied." Adrian's voice stayed level, almost kind. That scared people more than shouting ever did. "People make assumptions when you drop my name in certain rooms. Assumptions I now have to either confirm or deny. Which would you prefer?" Marcus opened his mouth, closed it, reached for his whiskey with a shaking hand. Before Adrian could press his advantage, someone stumbled into their booth. A woman, mid-20s, soaking wet, dark hair plastered to her face. Her gray blouse clung to her shoulders, and her shoes squelched water onto the floor. She looked like she'd run through the storm without stopping. "I'm so sorry I'm late, honey," she said breathlessly, sliding into the booth beside Adrian before he could react. Traffic was insane. Adrian went very still. Marcus stared. The woman turned to Adrian, and he saw it then. The fear in her eyes. Real fear. The kind that made people do stupid, desperate things. Her hand found his under the table, gripping tight enough to hurt. "Please," she whispered, so low only he could hear. "Just, please." Adrian's mind processed the variables instantly. She wasn't a threat. Her dress was too cheap, her jewelry too simple. She wasn't armed. He could tell from the way she moved. She was running from something, someone. He glanced past her toward the bar. A man in an expensive suit stood there, watching. Tall, gym-toned, with the kind of polished look that usually hid something ugly underneath. His eyes were locked on the woman beside Adrian, and his expression cycled between confusion and rage. Adrian made his decision. "Traffic in this weather? I told you to take the car." He shifted, making room for her, his voice carrying that particular tone of bored affection that sold intimacy. "Marcus, this is my associate. She's here to verify the terms before we finalize." The woman's grip on his hand relaxed slightly. Marcus looked between them, clearly confused but too anxious about his own situation to ask questions. "I'm Emily," the woman said, recovering faster than Adrian expected. She even managed a professional smile. "Sorry for the interruption. Please, continue." "We were just finishing." Adrian kept his eyes on Marcus, but his attention was split. The man at the bar was still watching, but he hadn't moved. Not yet. "Marcus was just explaining how he plans to earn back my trust." Marcus swallowed hard. "I'll do whatever you need. I swear." "Good. My people will contact you with details." Adrian's tone made it clear the conversation was over. "You can go." Marcus practically scrambled out of the booth, shooting nervous glances at Emily as he fled toward the exit. The moment he was gone, Adrian turned his full attention to the woman sitting entirely too close to him. "You have 30 seconds to explain," he said quietly, "before I decide whether helping you was a mistake." Emily's composure cracked. She glanced toward the bar where the man was now walking toward them, his stride purposeful. That's my ex, she said quickly. Ryan. He's been following me for 3 weeks. Tonight he showed up at my apartment, broke the lock. I ran, and he followed me here. I saw you, and you looked important, and I thought if he believed I was with someone, he might what? Leave you alone? Adrian's voice held no judgment, just curiosity. I don't know. I didn't think. I just needed him to stop. Ryan was 20 feet away now, 15. Adrian made another calculation. He could walk away. Should walk away. This wasn't his problem. He had enough complications without adding a stranger's domestic drama to the list. But something about the fear in her eyes, the way her hand still trembled in his, reminded him of another life. Another woman who'd needed help and hadn't gotten it in time. He stood, pulling Emily with him. Dance with me. What? You wanted him to believe we're together. Sell it. Adrian guided her toward the small dance floor near the piano, where 2 other couples swayed to a slow, smoky rendition of something old and melancholic. Emily hesitated for only a second before stepping into his arms. She was stiff at first, uncertain, but Adrian led with the kind of effortless confidence that came from years of navigating situations far more dangerous than a simple dance. Relax, he murmured. If you look terrified, this won't work. I am terrified, she whispered back. Then pretend you're not. You asked a stranger for help in a room full of criminals. You're either brave or desperate. Either way, don't waste it. She laughed, a short, surprised sound, and some of the tension left her shoulders. You're really not what I expected. What did you expect? I don't know. Someone who'd tell me to handle my own problems. I still might. Adrian spun her gently, positioning them so he could see Ryan over her shoulder. The man stood at the edge of the dance floor, hands clenched, radiating barely controlled anger. But first tell me about him. The truth. Emily's breath hitched. We dated for 8 months. I ended it 3 months ago because he wanted to control everything. Where I went, who I talked to, what I wore. When I finally told him I was done, he said I didn't get to make that choice. And tonight? Tonight I came home and he was inside my apartment, waiting. He said we needed to talk about our future. Her voice dropped. He had flowers and zip ties in his jacket pocket. I saw them when he reached for me. Adrian's expression didn't change, but something cold settled in his chest. Did he touch you? I ran before he could. Ryan started toward them. Adrian adjusted his grip, pulling Emily closer, making the embrace look more intimate than protective. When he gets here, Adrian said softly, follow my lead. Don't argue. Don't contradict. Just look at me like you trust me. I don't know you. Pretend. Ryan stopped 3 feet away. Up close, Adrian could see the calculation in his eyes. The kind of man who sized up every situation as a potential fight, every person as either a threat or a target. Emily, Ryan said, his voice tight with false calm. We need to talk. Emily turned in Adrian's arms, but didn't step away. There's nothing to talk about, Ryan. I told you that. You didn't answer my calls. You blocked my number. That's not how adults handle things. Adults respect boundaries. Her voice was steadier now, but Adrian could feel her pulse racing against his chest. I asked you to leave me alone. Ryan's eyes flicked to Adrian, dismissive and cold. And who's this? Your new boyfriend? That was fast? Adrian smiled. It wasn't a friendly expression. Fast implies she needed time to get over you. I'm not seeing evidence that's the case. Ryan's jaw tightened. This doesn't concern you. Emily is in my arms. That makes it my concern. I don't know who you think you are, but Emily and I have history, real history, not whatever this is. Adrian released Emily just enough to extend his hand toward Ryan, a gesture that looked polite but positioned him between them. Adrian Volkov. The name hit like a physical blow. Ryan's confidence cracked visibly. Even people who didn't run in certain circles knew that name, knew what it meant. The Adrian Volkov? Ryan's voice had lost its edge. I don't particularly like that question. It implies there are others. Adrian kept his hand extended, waiting. And you are? Ryan didn't take the offered handshake. Ryan Bennett. Bennett? Real estate development, North Side? Adrian tilted his head thoughtfully. Your firm handles property acquisitions for the Morrison Group. Ryan's face went pale. The Morrison Group had ties to Adrian's network. Not direct, but close enough that causing problems with Adrian would definitely reach their ears. I didn't realize Emily was seeing someone, Ryan said carefully. She didn't mention it. Why would she? You're her ex. Her personal life isn't your business anymore. Right, of course. Ryan took a step back, hands raised in surrender. My mistake. Emily, I'll leave you alone. Sorry for the confusion. He turned and walked away quickly, threading through tables toward the exit. Emily exhaled shakily. Is he really leaving? For now? Adrian watched Ryan disappear through the door. But men like that don't give up easily. They just get more careful about when and where they approach. The music ended. The piano player transitioned into something faster, more upbeat. Other couples filtered onto the floor, filling the space around them. Emily stepped back, putting distance between them. Thank you. I'm sorry for dragging you into this. I'll go. Where? Home. My apartment. The apartment he broke into tonight? She hesitated. I'll stay with a friend. Do you have friends who can protect you if he comes back? Friends who make men like Ryan Bennett think twice? Emily's expression hardened. I can't ask for more help. You already did enough. I'm not offering out of kindness. Adrian pulled out his phone, typing quickly. I'm offering because I don't like unfinished business, and sending you home alone means this situation isn't finished. He'll escalate. Men like him always do. You don't know that. Yes, I do. Adrian's voice was flat, certain. He showed up at your apartment with zip ties, Emily. That's not a man who wants to talk. That's a man who's decided you're his property, and he's taking you back whether you agree or not. The truth of it settled over her face, the fear she'd been pushing down rising back to the surface. I don't have anywhere else to go, she admitted quietly. My friends are great, but they can't handle someone like Ryan, and I can't afford a hotel that he won't find. Adrian's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, then pocketed it. My car is outside. I'm taking you somewhere safe for tonight. Tomorrow, we'll deal with Ryan Bennett permanently. Why would you do this? Because I'm in a position to help, and you asked. That's rare enough to be worth something. He gestured toward the exit. Unless you'd rather take your chances with whatever he's planning next. Emily looked toward the door, then back at Adrian. Whatever she saw in his face seemed to settle something in her. Okay, she said, but just for tonight. Adrian's car was exactly what Emily expected. Black, expensive, and currently being guarded by a man built like a brick wall wearing a suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent. Victor, Adrian said by way of introduction. He'll follow us. Insurance. Victor nodded once, his expression suggesting he'd seen and done things that made normal people nervous. Emily decided not to ask questions. The drive took them out of downtown, through neighborhoods that got progressively quieter and more expensive. Adrian didn't speak, his attention on his phone as he typed messages and made calls that consisted mostly of single-word responses. Emily watched rain streak across the window, her mind cycling through everything that had happened in the last hour. She'd interrupted a meeting between Adrian Volkov, a man whose reputation preceded him in ways that made the news cycle carefully avoid his name, and some desperate businessmen. She'd lied to a mafia boss. She'd danced with him, and now she was in his car being driven to an unknown location. This was insane. Second thoughts? Adrian asked without looking up from his phone. About 100 of them. Good, means you're thinking clearly. He finally put the phone away, turning his attention to her. Tell me about the zip ties. Emily flinched. What? You saw them in his pocket. How did you get close enough to see that without him noticing you'd seen them? I didn't. Not at first. He tried to hug me when I came in. That's when I saw them. He pulled back when I went stiff, realized I'd noticed. That's when I ran. Where does he work? Bennett Development. He's the VP. Family business? His uncle owns it. Adrian nodded slowly, processing. Security at your apartment? A regular lock and a doorman who's usually asleep by 9. He broke the lock. Did he break the door? Just jimmied the lock. The door looked fine. Experienced then, or he planned this enough to bring tools. Adrian's expression was thoughtful, distant. What do you do for work, Emily? The question surprised her. I restore damaged art. Paintings mostly. I work for a private conservation studio downtown. Interesting work. It pays the bills. Barely. And Ryan knew where you worked? Of course. We dated for 8 months. Does he have keys to your studio? Emily's stomach dropped. No, I never gave him... She stopped. But I kept a spare in my apartment, in my desk drawer, which he had access to tonight. You think he'll go there? I think he'll go wherever you might run to. Work, friends, family. Anywhere that feels safe. Adrian pulled out his phone again. Give me your studio's address. Emily recited it, watching as Adrian sent another message. What are you doing? Making sure he doesn't have access to another place you care about. The car turned onto a tree-lined street where the houses sat back from the road behind gates and tall hedges. They stopped in front of a modern townhouse, 3 stories of clean lines and dark windows. Victor pulled up behind them as Adrian opened Emily's door. Inside, the house was exactly what Emily expected. Minimalist, expensive, and almost aggressively impersonal. No photos, no clutter, just clean surfaces and furniture that looked like it came from a catalog titled How Rich Men Live When They're Never Home. Guest room is upstairs, second door on the left, Adrian said, shrugging out of his jacket. Bathroom is across the hall. You'll find clothes in the closet that should fit well enough for tonight. You keep women's clothes in your guest room? I keep options for unexpected guests. Gender isn't usually relevant to the situation. He loosened his tie, and for the first time since she'd crashed into his booth, he looked almost tired. There's food in the kitchen if you're hungry. Security is handled. You're safe here. Emily wanted to ask how he could be so certain, but the way Victor stationed himself by the front door answered that question. Thank you, she said instead. Really, I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't. You would have figured something out. You already did by asking for help. Adrian moved toward what looked like a home office. Get some sleep. We'll talk in the morning about next steps. Emily climbed the stairs, found the guest room, and discovered that clothes in the closet meant a full wardrobe of designer options in multiple sizes. She picked out a t-shirt and sweatpants that were only slightly too big and sat on the edge of the bed. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. I saw you leave with him. I know who he is. Do you? Do you know what kind of man you just trusted? Call me. Let me explain. I can protect you from him. Emily's hands shook. She blocked the number, then turned off her phone entirely. Outside, thunder rolled across the sky. Inside, she was safe in a stranger's house, protected by a man whose reputation suggested he was exactly the kind of danger Ryan warned about. But Ryan had been the one waiting in her apartment with zip ties. Emily lay back on the bed, staring at the ceiling, and wondered which choice would haunt her more. Adrian stood in his office, looking at the file Victor had sent over. Ryan Bennett's background check painted a predictable picture. Privileged upbringing, mediocre grades bought with family money, a string of short-term relationships that ended abruptly. 3 ex-girlfriends, 2 restraining orders filed and then mysteriously dropped, 1 sealed police report from his college years. Want me to make him disappear? Victor asked from the doorway. No. Adrian closed the file. That's too easy and too visible. So what's the play? Adrian considered the question. He could do what Victor suggested, have Ryan dealt with permanently. But that created complications. Questions. Bennett Development had connections, and while Adrian's reach extended far, he preferred not to test it over something that could be handled more elegantly. Find out who dropped those restraining orders, Adrian said, and get me everything on that sealed police report. I want to know what the family paid to bury. And Bennett himself? Have him followed. I want to know everywhere he goes, everyone he talks to. If he so much as drives past Emily's apartment, I want to know about it. Victor nodded and disappeared. Adrian returned to the window, watching rain cascade down the glass. He'd meant what he said earlier. He didn't do this out of kindness. He did it because the situation offended his sense of order, because men like Ryan Bennett operated on the assumption that money and family connections meant they could do whatever they wanted without consequences. Adrian had built his entire empire on teaching people that assumption was wrong. His phone rang. Marcus Delacroix. I signed your contract, Marcus said without preamble. We're square now, right? About that, Adrian said. I need a favor. What kind of favor? The kind that squares your debt and earns you some breathing room. Interested? What do you need? Information on Bennett development, specifically on Ryan Bennett. Everything you can find about their business practices, their financial backers, their current projects. I want to know where the bodies are buried. There was a pause. Why? Because I'm asking. That's all you need to know. Fine. I'll have something for you by morning. Adrian hung up and stood in the dark, watching the storm rage outside. Somewhere in the city, Ryan Bennett was probably planning his next move. Probably convincing himself that Emily would come back once she realized her mistake. Probably still thinking he had control. He would learn otherwise soon enough. Upstairs, Emily lay awake in a stranger's bed, wondering what morning would bring, wondering if she'd made the right choice, wondering if Adrian Volkov was her salvation or just a different kind of danger. She wouldn't have to wonder long, because in Adrian's world, things moved quickly once they started moving, and they had definitely started moving now. Emily woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and the smell of coffee drifting from somewhere downstairs. For a disorienting moment, she forgot where she was. Then it all crashed back. Ryan, the apartment, the velvet room, Adrian Volkov. She found her phone. 8 missed calls from Ryan's number, plus texts from 3 different numbers she didn't recognize, all of them variations of the same message. We need to talk. This is a misunderstanding. You're making a mistake. The last one was different. He's dangerous, Em. Whatever he told you, he's lying. I'm trying to protect you. Emily deleted them all and headed downstairs. Adrian sat at a kitchen island that looked like it belonged in an architecture magazine, reading something on his tablet while drinking coffee from a mug that probably cost more than her weekly grocery budget. There's coffee in the pot, he said without looking up, and breakfast in the oven if you're hungry. Emily poured coffee, found pastries and fruit arranged on a plate in the warmer, and sat across from him. Do you always feed people you rescue? I don't usually rescue people. You're a special case. Lucky me. Adrian finally looked up. You look rested. Good. We have a busy day. Doing what? Dealing with your Ryan Bennett problem. He slid the tablet across to her. It showed a police report from 6 years ago. Ryan was arrested for assault in college. Choked his girlfriend unconscious at a party. Witnesses included a resident advisor and 3 other students. The charges were dropped after Bennett Development made a generous donation to the university's new athletics center. Emily's stomach turned. I didn't know. The family made sure of that. They're good at making problems disappear. Adrian pulled up another document. 2 years later, a different girlfriend filed a restraining order. She withdrew it after accepting a settlement. No details on record about what prompted it, but the settlement was substantial enough to suggest it wasn't frivolous. Why are you showing me this? Because you need to understand what you're dealing with. Ryan Bennett isn't just a bad boyfriend. He's a pattern offender with a family that enables him. If we don't handle this correctly, he'll escalate until someone gets seriously hurt. And by handle this, you mean, we make it very clear that you're under protection he can't circumvent, and we give him incentive to move on to someone else. Adrian's voice was a matter of fact, almost clinical. Ideally without anyone ending up in the hospital or jail. Ideally? I'm a realist, Emily. Sometimes things get messy. Before Emily could respond, Victor entered through the front door, shaking rain from his jacket. Got something. Adrian gestured for him to continue. Bennett drove past Emily's apartment 4 times last night, once past her studio. This morning he showed up at her studio at 7 a.m., tried the door, looked through the windows, left when security showed up for rounds. Emily's coffee suddenly tasted bitter. He's escalating. Expected, Adrian said. He thinks you ran scared and you'll come back once you calm down. When that doesn't happen, he'll try harder. What do? You go about your normal life. You go to work. You maintain your routine. Are you insane? You just said he's dangerous. He is. But showing fear gives him power. Besides, you won't be alone. Adrian nodded toward Victor. Victor will be with you, and I'll be handling things on my end. Handling what things? Adrian smiled that not quite friendly smile. Let me worry about that. Quote. Emily arrived at the restoration studio at 9, Victor trailing 3 steps behind her like a well-dressed shadow. Her coworker Sarah looked up from the painting she was cleaning, took one look at Victor, and mouthed, "What the hell?" Emily mouthed back later and headed to her workstation. The studio occupied the third floor of a converted warehouse, all exposed brick and north-facing windows. It smelled like linseed oil and old canvas, a smell Emily usually found comforting. Today, it just reminded her that Ryan knew where she worked. She pulled out the painting she'd been restoring, an 18th century landscape damaged by water and time. Normally, she could lose herself in the meticulous work of cleaning and repairing. Today, her hands shook too much to trust herself with delicate brushwork. "Okay, spill," Sarah said, appearing at her elbow. "Who's the bodyguard?" "Long story. I've got all day." Emily glanced at Victor, who stood near the door, somehow managing to look both relaxed and intensely alert. "Ryan showed up at my apartment last night." Sarah's expression darkened. She'd been the one who helped Emily pack up Ryan's stuff when they broke up, who'd listened to hours of Emily processing the relationship, who'd celebrated when Emily finally ended it. "Please tell me you called the police." "I did something different," Emily explained the previous night in broad strokes, leaving out some of the more alarming details. Sarah listened, her eyes getting progressively wider. "Let me get this straight," Sarah said when Emily finished. "You asked Adrian Volkov to pretend to be your boyfriend, and he just agreed? And took me to his house, and assigned me a bodyguard. Emily, do you know who Adrian Volkov is? I'm getting that a lot." "He's not some random rich guy. He's—" Sarah lowered her voice, glancing at Victor. "He's connected. Like, seriously connected. People don't say no to him. He seemed nice enough. That's what makes him dangerous. He's polite and reasonable right up until he's not. And then people end up—" Sarah cut herself off. "Just be careful, okay? You jumped from one bad situation into a potentially worse one." Before Emily could respond, her phone buzzed. A text from Adrian. "Bennett Development just pulled permits for a new project on the south side. Interesting timing." Emily frowned, texting back, "What does that mean?" "It means they need permits to continue. Permits can be delayed. Delayed projects cost money. Money creates pressure. I'll explain tonight." "Who's that?" Sarah asked. "Adrian?" "Of course it is." Sarah shook her head. "Just promise me you're not trading one controlling guy for another." "It's not like that." "Isn't it? He's already deciding where you go and who protects you." The observation stung because it wasn't entirely wrong, but it also wasn't entirely right. "Ryan had zip ties," Emily said quietly. "He broke into my apartment with zip ties and flowers. Adrian's giving me options. That's different." Sarah's face softened. "Okay, you're right. I'm sorry. I'm just worried." "I know. Me too." They worked in silence for a while, Emily's hands gradually steadying enough to resume careful work on the painting. Around noon, Victor's phone buzzed. He answered, listened, then crossed to Emily. "We're leaving," he said. "What? Why?" "Bennett just entered the building." Emily's heart stuttered. "How did he—" "Doesn't matter. We're going now." Sarah grabbed her phone. "I'm calling security." "Already on it," Victor said, guiding Emily toward the back exit. "Building security has delayed him downstairs. We're taking the service elevator." They were halfway down the back stairs when Emily heard Ryan's voice echoing from the main floor. "I know she's here. Emily, we need to talk." Victor moved faster, practically carrying Emily down the last flight and out into an alley where a black SUV waited, engine running. "Where are we going?" Emily asked as Victor pulled into traffic. "Somewhere Bennett can't follow." Her phone rang. Adrian. "Are you with Victor?" he asked without preamble. "Yes." "Good. Change of plans. Bennett's forcing our hand faster than I expected. We're moving to containment." "Containment? I'll explain when you get here. Victor knows where to go." The line went dead. Emily looked at Victor. "Where are we going?" "Volkov Estate, North Shore." "Estate? He has an estate?" Victor's expression suggested this was a stupid question. Of course he has an estate. The Volkov estate sat on 10 acres of lakefront property, hidden behind gates and walls that looked decorative, but Emily suspected were far more functional. The house itself was a blend of old-world elegance and modern security. Cameras on every corner, guards stationed at strategic points, windows that probably cost more than Emily's car. Adrian met them in what he called the East Sitting Room, though Emily would have called it a library that doubled as a war room. Maps and documents covered a large table. Two other men stood nearby, both wearing the same brand of expensive suit and watchful expression as Victor. "Emily," Adrian said, "thanks for coming." "Did I have a choice?" "Of course. But I'm glad you made this one." He gestured to the table. "We have a situation. Ryan Bennett is accelerating faster than anticipated. He's no longer trying to hide his behavior, which means he's either desperate or he's decided the consequences don't matter. Either way, we need to adjust our approach." "What approach?" "You never actually told me what the plan was." "The plan was to make him understand you're protected and convince him to move on. That relied on him being rational. This morning's display suggests rationality is off the table." One of the other men spoke up. "He made a scene at her studio, threatened security when they tried to remove him. He's not hiding anymore." Adrian nodded. "Which means we need to either give him what he wants or take away his ability to chase it." Emily's throat went dry. "What does that mean?" "It means we have options. None of them perfect." Adrian pulled out a chair, gestured for Emily to sit. "Option 1. You disappear for a while. New city, new job, new life. I have resources that can make that happen cleanly. You want me to run away. I want you to survive. Running isn't cowardice if it keeps you alive." "What's option 2? "Option 2 is we make Ryan Bennett's life complicated enough that he doesn't have time or resources to chase you. We pull permits on his projects, we audit his company, we make sure every business dealing he's involved in gets scrutinized until he's too busy fighting fires to light new ones." "That's intense." "It's also temporary. Eventually he'd work through it and come back." "And option 3? Adrian's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes went very cold. "Option 3 is we remove Ryan Bennett as a threat. Permanently." The room went silent. "You mean kill him?" Emily said. "I mean make him understand that continuing this path has consequences he won't survive. How he interprets that is up to him." Emily stood, needing to move, needing to think. "I can't ask you to do that, any of that." "You're not asking, I'm offering." "Why? Why would you do any of this for someone you just met?" Adrian was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer than she'd heard before. "Because 5 years ago, I knew someone in a similar situation. She didn't ask for help. She thought she could handle it herself. She was wrong." "What happened to her?" "She died. And the man who killed her walked free because he had family money and good lawyers." Adrian's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "I wasn't in a position to help her then. I am now. With you." Emily understood then. This wasn't about her, not entirely. This was about a debt Adrian felt he owed to someone who wasn't here anymore. She was just the proxy. "I don't want to run," she said, "and I don't want anyone killed. But I can't live like this either, looking over my shoulder forever." "Then we go with option 2, Adrian said. "We make his life difficult. We protect you while he's distracted. And we wait for him to make a mistake big enough that we can use it." "What kind of mistake?" "The kind that puts him in jail without anyone having to pull strings. Ryan's escalating. Escalation leads to sloppiness. Sloppiness leads to evidence. Evidence leads to consequences he can't buy his way out of." It wasn't a perfect plan, but it was better than running and better than violence. "Okay," Emily said. "Let's do that." Adrian nodded to his men. "Set it up. I want Bennett development under a microscope by end of business today. Environmental reviews, building code inspections, labor practices, everything." They dispersed efficiently, leaving Emily alone with Adrian. "You can stay here while this plays out," Adrian said. "The estate is secure. You'll be safe." "For how long?" "As long as it takes." Emily looked around the elegant room, at the life she'd stumbled into by accident. "This isn't my world." "No. But it can protect you while your world sorts itself out. And after, when this is over, after, you go back to your life, your work, your world." Adrian's expression was unreadable. "I'm not keeping you, Emily. I'm helping you. There's a difference." She wanted to believe that. She wanted to believe this was temporary, that she'd walk away unscathed, that Adrian Volkov was just a good man who happened to have dangerous resources. But Sarah's words echoed in her mind. He's polite and reasonable right up until he's not. Emily just hoped she'd be gone before she saw what not looked like. 3 days at the estate, and Emily was learning the rhythms of Adrian's world. Breakfast arrived at 7:30, whether she was awake or not. Victor checked in every 2 hours. The guards changed shifts at intervals she'd started to memorize. And Adrian himself appeared and disappeared like a ghost, always dressed in expensive suits, always on his phone, always managing situations she only half understood. She'd set up a makeshift restoration workspace in one of the guest rooms, working on digital catalogs and consulting with Sarah remotely about ongoing projects. It wasn't ideal, but it kept her hands busy and her mind occupied. Mostly. On the fourth morning, Adrian found her in the library, surrounded by art history books she'd pulled from his surprisingly extensive collection. "Research or distraction?" he asked. Emily looked up from a volume on Renaissance techniques. "Both. How's the Ryan situation?" "Progressing." Adrian set down his coffee and pulled out his tablet. Bennett Development failed 3 separate inspections yesterday. Environmental concerns on the South Side project, code violations on 2 existing properties, and some interesting discrepancies in their permit applications. "You did all that in 3 days?" "I made some calls. Other people did the actual work." He scrolled through what looked like official documents. "The real gift came this morning. Ryan's uncle, the one who owns the company, is not happy. He had a very loud conversation with Ryan in their offices about bringing unwanted attention to family business." "You're listening to their private conversations?" Adrian's expression suggested this was another stupid question. "How else would I know what they're saying?" "That's illegal." "So is breaking into someone's apartment with zip ties. We all make choices." Emily couldn't argue with that logic, as twisted as it was. "What did the uncle say?" "He told Ryan to handle his personal problems quietly or find another job. Ryan responded poorly. There was yelling, some things were thrown. Security had to intervene." "So Ryan's in trouble at work. That doesn't stop him from coming after me." "No, but it divides his attention. A man fighting fires at work has less energy for stalking his ex." Adrian sat across from her, and for the first time since this started, he looked almost tired. "These things take time, Emily. I know that's frustrating. What I don't understand is why you're spending this much time on it. You have an entire empire to run. Why dedicate resources to one woman's stalker ex?" Adrian was quiet for a moment, his fingers drumming on the armrest, the first nervous gesture she'd seen from him. "I told you about the woman who died." "You said you knew her." "Her name was Irina. She was my cousin." Adrian's voice stayed level, but something in his eyes shifted. "She got involved with someone who seemed charming at first. By the time she realized what he was, she was in too deep. She tried to leave. He made sure she never got the chance." Emily's chest tightened. "I'm sorry. The family wanted to handle it the traditional way, make him disappear. But Irina wouldn't have wanted that. She believed in systems, in justice. So we tried it her way, restraining orders, police reports, evidence." Adrian's laugh was bitter. "His family had better lawyers, better connections. He walked. Irina's death was ruled an accident." "That's not justice." "No, it's not." Adrian met her eyes. "So when I see someone in a similar situation, I don't wait for the system anymore. I become the system." Emily understood then. This wasn't about her at all. She was a second chance, a way for Adrian to rewrite an ending he couldn't change. "I'm not Irina," she said gently. "I know. But maybe you get to survive where she didn't." Before Emily could respond, Victor appeared in the doorway. "We have a problem." Adrian was on his feet instantly. "What kind?" "Bennett's outside the gates. He's demanding to see Emily." Emily's blood went cold. "How did he find this place?" "Doesn't matter." Adrian was already moving toward the security office, Emily and Victor following. "How many people with him?" "Just him. He drove himself." They entered a room filled with monitors showing every angle of the property. On one screen, Ryan's car sat just outside the main gate. He stood beside it, looking up at the cameras. Adrian pulled out his phone, dialing. A moment later, Ryan's voice came through the speakers. "I know she's in there, Volkov. I just want to talk to her." "Mr. Bennett," Adrian said, his voice perfectly calm. "You're trespassing on private property. I suggest you leave before I call the police." "Call them. I'll tell them you're holding my girlfriend against her will." "Emily isn't your girlfriend. She hasn't been for 3 months. And she's here voluntarily." "Let me talk to her then. If she tells me herself to leave, I will." Adrian looked at Emily. Your choice? Emily stared at Ryan on the screen. Even through the camera, she could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands kept clenching and unclenching. He looked like he hadn't slept, like he was barely holding it together. If I talk to him, he'll leave? She asked. He says he will. Whether that's true is another question. Emily made a decision she immediately questioned. Put me on speaker. Adrian raised an eyebrow but complied, holding out his phone. Ryan, Emily said, proud that her voice didn't shake. You need to leave. Em, thank God. Listen, I know you're scared, but you don't understand what you've gotten into. Volkov is dangerous. Whatever he's told you, whatever he's promised, he's protecting me from you, Ryan. That's what he's doing. Protecting you? He's isolating you. That's what abusers do, Em. They separate you from your friends, your life, make you dependent on them. The irony wasn't lost on Emily. You broke into my apartment. You had zip ties. For the moving boxes. I was going to help you organize. I brought supplies. You're lying. Ryan's voice cracked. I love you. I made mistakes. I know that. But we can fix this. Just come out here. Come talk to me face to face. No. Emily, please. I said no. I'm done, Ryan. I've been done for 3 months. You need to accept that and move on. I can't do that. You're making a mistake. When you realize that, when he shows you who he really is, you'll wish you'd listened to me. Adrian took the phone back. You've had your conversation. Leave now, or I'll have you removed. You can't keep her prisoner forever, Volkov. Eventually she'll leave, and when she does, I'll be waiting. Is that a threat? It's a promise. The line went dead. On screen, Ryan got back in his car, but he didn't drive away. He just sat there, staring at the gate. He's not leaving, Victor observed. No, he's not. Adrian made another call. I need a unit at the north gate. We have someone who needs an escort off the property. Within 5 minutes, a police car pulled up. Emily watched as 2 officers approached Ryan's vehicle. There was a conversation she couldn't hear. Ryan gestured animatedly at the estate. The officers remained unmoved. Finally, reluctantly, Ryan drove away, the police car following. Friends of yours? Emily asked. The department appreciates my family's charitable contributions. They're usually responsive when I call. Must be nice. It's useful. Adrian turned away from the monitors. But it's also temporary. Ryan's right about one thing. You can't stay here forever. I know. Which means we need to accelerate our timeline. Force his hand before he forces ours. How? Adrian smiled, and this time it was genuinely predatory. By giving him exactly what he wants. Almost. Emily didn't like the sound of that. Explain. Tonight you're going back to your apartment. Are you insane? He just... With protection. Visible protection. And you're going to post about it on social media. Make it public that you're moving on with your life, that you're not hiding. That'll set him off. Exactly. He'll react. And when he does, we'll have cameras recording, witnesses ready, everything we need to build a case that even his family's lawyers can't dismiss. You want to use me as bait? I want to give you your life back. This is how we do it. Emily thought about her apartment, sitting empty for days. Her studio, where she'd been working remotely because showing up in person felt too risky. Her life, on pause because one man couldn't accept rejection. What if something goes wrong? Then Victor will be there, and so will I. Adrian's voice was steady, certain. I won't let him hurt you, Emily. That's a promise. Emily wanted to believe him. More than that, she was tired of being afraid. Tired of running. Tired of letting Ryan dictate her choices. Okay, she said. Let's do it. Victor looked skeptical. This is a bad idea. Most of my ideas are, Adrian said. That's why they work. That evening, Emily returned to her apartment for the first time since running out in the rain. Victor went in first, checking every room, every window, every possible entry point. When he gave the all clear, Emily stepped inside. Everything was exactly as she'd left it. The desk drawer still open where she'd grabbed her keys. The flowers Ryan had brought still sitting on the kitchen counter, wilted and dead. The door lock had been replaced with something that looked military grade. Courtesy of Volkov, Victor said when he noticed her looking at it. New locks on all entry points, cameras in the hallway, panic button by your bed. He's thorough. He's careful. There's a difference. Emily pulled out her phone and did what Adrian had suggested, posted a photo of herself in her apartment with a caption about getting back to normal life. Within minutes, her phone started buzzing with responses from friends and coworkers. Sarah called immediately. "Are you sure about this?" Sarah asked. "Coming back so soon?" "I can't hide forever." "You could hide a little longer, like until Ryan moves to another country." "That's not a real solution. Neither is painting a target on yourself." Emily couldn't argue with that, but she also couldn't explain the real plan without sounding insane. "I'll be careful. I promise." After hanging up, Emily tried to settle into normal evening routines. She made tea. She changed into comfortable clothes. She sat on her couch and pretended everything was fine. Victor stationed himself by the window, practically invisible despite his size. "You don't have to stay in here with me," Emily said. "I know you'd rather be in the hallway." Adrian's orders are to stay within 10 feet. I'm already pushing it at this distance. Does he always micromanage like this? Only when he cares about the outcome. Emily wasn't sure how to interpret that. "How long have you worked for him?" 8 years. "Do you like it?" Victor considered the question. "It's not about liking. It's about loyalty. Adrian's the kind of man who inspires that." "Because he's scary?" "Because he keeps his promises, good and bad." Victor's attention never left the window. "You asked him for help. He gave it. That's not something everyone would do." "He's doing it for his cousin. He's doing it because it's right. Irina's just the reason he knows the difference." Before Emily could ask what that meant, Victor's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then stood. "Bennett's in the building." Emily's heart stuttered. How did he get past the doorman? Probably told them he was visiting someone else. He's on the elevator now. What do we do? We wait, and we record. Victor pulled out his phone, started a video. When he knocks, answer through the door. Don't open it. Make him say whatever he's going to say out loud. The elevator dinged down the hall. Footsteps approached. Then knocking, hard and insistent. "Emily, I know you're in there. I saw your post." Emily moved to the door, her legs unsteady. "Go away, Ryan. We need to talk, face to face." "No, we don't. I already told you. We're done." "You don't mean that. You're scared. That's okay. I understand. But you need to let me in so we can discuss this like adults." "I'm not letting you in." "Emily," his voice changed, got softer, more dangerous. "I've been patient. I've tried to be understanding, but this is getting ridiculous. You're my girlfriend. We're going to work this out whether you like it or not." "I'm not your girlfriend. I haven't been for months. That's what you think. But we both know you'll come back. You always do." Emily's hands shook. She wanted to scream, to tell him everything she'd been holding back for months. But Victor shook his head slightly. "Keep him talking." "Why can't you just accept this, Ryan? Why can't you move on?" "Because we're meant to be together. I've invested too much in this relationship to let you throw it away over nothing. You broke into my apartment. I was worried about you. You had zip ties. For the boxes. How many times do I have to explain that? You're lying. You've been lying since the day we met, and I'm done." The door handle rattled. Ryan was trying to force it. "Let me in, Emily." "No. Let me in." The door shuddered as he threw his weight against it. The new lock held, but Emily stumbled backward. Victor was already on his phone. "We need security at Emily Carter's apartment. Now." The pounding continued. Ryan's voice rose, alternating between pleading and threatening. "You think Volkov cares about you? You're just another problem to him, another file to manage. But I love you, Em. I'm the one who actually loves you." "You don't love me. You love controlling me. There's a difference. Open this door." "No!" Sirens wailed outside. The pounding stopped abruptly. Emily heard running footsteps, then voices in the hallway. Security had arrived. Victor ended his recording. "Got it all. Audio and video. That's assault, terroristic threats, and attempted breaking and entering." Emily slid down the wall, her whole body shaking. "Is it over?" "Not yet, but it's closer." 20 minutes later, Adrian arrived. He found Emily on the couch, wrapped in a blanket Victor had provided, while police officers took her statement. "I'm fine," Emily said before Adrian could ask. "He didn't get in." "I know. Victor sent me the video." Adrian sat beside her. and for the first time since they'd met, he looked genuinely angry. He escalated faster than I expected. What happens now? Now we press charges, restraining order. The video gives us everything we need. One of the officers, an older woman with tired eyes, closed her notebook. Miss Carter, I'm going to be honest with you. Restraining orders are just paper. They work great until they don't. Do you have somewhere safe you can stay while this gets processed? Emily looked at Adrian. He nodded. She does, he said. After the police left and the building security had been thoroughly briefed on Ryan being banned from the property, Adrian drove Emily back to the estate. Victor followed in a separate car, already on the phone coordinating next steps. I'm sorry, Emily said as they pulled through the gates. This was supposed to prove he'd back off. Instead, he's getting worse. It proved exactly what we needed, that he's dangerous and unstable. Now we have documentation. Adrian's grip on the steering wheel was tight enough to whiten his knuckles. But you're right. He's escalating beyond what intimidation can contain. What does that mean? Adrian didn't answer until they were inside, the doors locked, security protocols engaged. Then he turned to face her, and Emily saw something in his expression she hadn't seen before. Real concern. It means we move to option 3, he said quietly. I mean we make Ryan Bennett understand that his choices have permanent consequences, and we make sure he never has the opportunity to hurt you or anyone else again. Emily's throat went dry. You're talking about killing him. I'm talking about removing a threat that can't be managed any other way. No. The word came out stronger than Emily expected. I won't be responsible for someone's death. I don't care how much he scares me. Even if it means spending the rest of your life looking over your shoulder? Even then, Adrian studied her face for a long moment. Whatever he saw there seemed to satisfy something. Then we find another way. What other way is there? I don't know yet, but I'll figure it out. He moved toward his office, then paused. Emily, for what it's worth, I'm glad you said no. It means you're still you. This hasn't broken you. Feels pretty broken from where I'm standing. Broken is when you stop caring about consequences. You're bruised. That's different. He disappeared into his office, leaving Emily alone in the elegant foyer. Through the windows, she could see Victor conferring with other security personnel. Beyond the gates, the city sprawled in the distance, her real life, waiting for her to reclaim it. She just had to survive long enough to get back to it. The next morning, Adrian was gone before Emily woke up. Victor informed her he'd had an early meeting downtown and would return by afternoon. In the meantime, Emily was to stay on the property. She spent the morning working, trying to lose herself in the familiar rhythms of restoration research. But her mind kept circling back to the same question. What was Adrian's plan? Around noon, her phone rang. Unknown number. Ms. Carter? An unfamiliar voice, professional and careful. This is Detective Morrison with Chicago PD. I'm calling about the incident last night with Ryan Bennett. Yes? Mr. Bennett has been released on bail pending his hearing. I wanted to inform you that the restraining order has been filed, but it won't be official until he's served, which should happen today. Emily's stomach dropped. He's out already? His family posted bail this morning. Standard procedure, unfortunately. Even though he tried to break down my door? The evidence is compelling, and we're pursuing charges. But unless someone's an immediate flight risk or danger, bail is usually granted. The detective's voice softened. I'm sorry. I know that's not what you wanted to hear. After hanging up, Emily found Victor. Ryan's out on bail. Victor's expression didn't change. Adrian expected that. Then why didn't he warn me? Because he didn't want you to worry until it was confirmed. Now it's confirmed. Victor's phone buzzed. He glanced at it. And Adrian wants to see you in his office when you have a moment. Emily found Adrian at his desk, surrounded by documents and looking more disheveled than she'd ever seen him. His jacket was off, his tie loosened, and he'd clearly been running his hands through his hair. Ryan's family posted a $500,000 bail, Adrian said without preamble. They also hired Jonathan Reeves, who's that? The best defense attorney in the state. The man who gets guilty people acquitted because he's that good at finding technicalities. Adrian pushed a file across the desk. He's already filed motions to suppress the video Victor took, claiming it was illegally recorded without consent. But Ryan was in a public hallway, threatening me. In Illinois, you need two-party consent for recordings in some circumstances. Reeves is arguing this qualifies. He'll probably lose, but it'll delay the trial for months. Emily sank into a chair. So even with evidence, he might walk. The criminal case is progressing, but it's slow, and Ryan knows it. Adrian pulled up something on his computer, turned it to face her. He posted this an hour ago. It was a social media post from Ryan's account. A photo of Emily from their dating days, smiling at the camera. The caption read, "Missing my girl. Can't wait until all these misunderstandings get cleared up and we can be together again. Love you, Em." Emily felt sick. He's acting like we're still together, like none of this happened. He's establishing a narrative. If this goes to trial, his lawyers will paint him as a devoted boyfriend being kept from his girlfriend by outside interference. Me, specifically. That's insane. That's strategy. Adrian closed the laptop. Which is why we need to change tactics again. I'm almost afraid to ask. Bennett Development is about to have some serious problems. The kind that require Ryan's uncle's full attention. The kind that might make him reconsider having his nephew around, creating additional complications. You're going after his family? I'm going after their business. There's a difference. Adrian pulled up another document. 3 of their current projects involve properties with disputed ownership claims. Claims that are about to get significantly more credible. You're fabricating evidence? I'm uncovering evidence that was previously overlooked. Whether it's credible enough to halt construction is up to the courts. Emily should have been horrified, should have protested, but all she felt was tired. What happens when Ryan figures out you're behind this? He already knows I'm behind it. That's the point. I want him focused on me, fighting me, burning through his family's money and patience. Every dollar they spend on lawyers for business disputes is a dollar they're not spending on his criminal defense. You're trying to bankrupt them. I'm trying to make keeping Ryan out of prison more expensive than cutting him loose. His uncle is a businessman. Eventually he'll do the math. It was ruthless. Calculated. Exactly what Emily expected from someone with Adrian's reputation. It was also probably the only thing that would work. How long will this take? She asked. Weeks? Maybe months? Adrian's expression softened slightly. I know that's not what you want to hear. No, but it's better than the alternative. The alternative being option 3, which I still won't agree to. Adrian nodded slowly. Good. Keep holding that line. It matters. Emily left his office more confused than ever. Adrian Volkov was methodically destroying Ryan's family business, coordinating with police and lawyers, providing around-the-clock security, and generally upending his entire life to protect someone he barely knew. All because his cousin hadn't gotten the help she needed. It should have felt wrong. It should have scared her. Instead, for the first time in months, Emily felt like maybe she'd make it through this after all. 2 weeks of relative quiet, and Emily had almost convinced herself the worst was over. Ryan's business was collapsing under the weight of investigations Adrian had orchestrated. The restraining order was in place. She'd even managed to return to her studio for a few hours each day, slowly reclaiming pieces of her normal life. She should have known better. The invitation arrived on a Thursday morning, delivered to the estate by courier in a cream envelope with gold embossing. Emily was having breakfast when Victor brought it to Adrian, who opened it with the kind of casual precision that suggested he'd been expecting it. What is it? Emily asked, watching his expression shift from neutral to something harder. Carmine Valente is hosting a charity gala tomorrow night, art auction benefiting the Chicago Cultural Foundation. Adrian handed her the invitation. He's requesting my presence specifically. Emily scanned the elegant script, her stomach tightening. This is a trap. Of course it is. The question is what kind? Adrian pulled out his phone, already typing. Valente doesn't make social gestures. If he's inviting me to a public event, he's planning something that requires witnesses. So don't go. Not going sends the message that I'm afraid of him, that I'm hiding. Adrian's jaw tightened. Besides, there's a painting being auctioned that I've been tracking for 3 years. 17th century Dutch maritime piece, supposedly lost in a private collection fire in the 80s. If it's authentic, it's worth a fortune. And if Valente knows you want it, he'll make sure you don't get it. Probably, but I'm going anyway. Adrian met her eyes. And I'd like you to come with me. Emily set down her coffee. You want me at a gala hosted by your enemy? I want you beside me when I walk into whatever he's planning. You've been hiding here for 2 weeks, Emily. At some point, you have to step back into your life. My life doesn't usually include black tie events with organized crime figures. It does now. Adrian's voice was gentle but firm. Valente knows about you, knows you're under my protection. If you don't show up, he'll interpret that as weakness, confirmation that he can control my choices by threatening the people I care about. The weight of that statement hung in the air between them. People I care about. Adrian had never said it quite that plainly before. What if something happens? Emily asked. Then Victor and I handle it. But nothing will happen in a room full of Chicago's wealthiest donors with cameras everywhere. Valente's not that reckless. Adrian paused. Though I would understand if you'd rather stay here. Emily thought about it. Thought about Ryan, about months of hiding and fear and letting other people dictate where she could go and what she could do. She'd asked Adrian for protection, and he'd given it, but at some point protection had to transition back into living. I'll need a dress, she said. Adrian smiled. Already handled. There's a stylist coming this afternoon. The gala was held at the Sinclair Museum, a palatial building on the north side that usually hosted exhibitions of priceless artifacts. Tonight, it had been transformed into something out of a movie. Crystal chandeliers, champagne fountains, servers in white gloves carrying trays of food Emily couldn't pronounce. Emily wore a midnight blue dress that the stylist had insisted was dignified but memorable, her hair swept up in a style that felt too elegant for someone who usually wore it in a messy bun while working. Adrian had matched her formality in a perfectly tailored tuxedo that made him look even more dangerous than usual. Victor and 2 other security personnel accompanied them, blending into the crowd with the practiced invisibility of professionals. Remember, Adrian murmured as they entered the main gallery, we're here for the painting. Everything else is theater. The room was filled with Chicago's elite, old money families, new tech millionaires, politicians, and people whose wealth came from sources they didn't discuss in polite company. Emily recognized several faces from news articles and society pages. None of them seemed to recognize her. Then she saw Carmine Valente. He stood near the auction display, surrounded by admirers, holding court like a king in his domain. He was older than Emily expected, maybe mid-60s, with silver hair and the kind of polished appearance that came from expensive grooming. When he saw Adrian, his smile widened. "Adrian Volkov," Valente called out, his voice carrying across the room. "I wasn't sure you'd accept my invitation." Adrian moved toward him with the confidence of someone walking into friendly territory, though Emily could feel the tension in his arm where she held it. "Carmine, thank you for including me. Beautiful event. We do what we can for the arts." Valente's eyes shifted to Emily. "And who is this lovely woman?" "Emily Carter. She's an art restoration specialist consulting on some of my recent acquisitions." "How fortunate for you." Valente extended his hand and Emily had no choice but to take it. His grip was firm, assessing. "Ms. Carter, I hope you're enjoying the evening." "It's stunning," Emily said, proud that her voice didn't shake. "Adrian has excellent taste in both art and company." Valente released her hand, his attention returning to Adrian. "I hope you've come prepared to bid. The maritime piece you've been chasing will be up for auction shortly." "I'm aware." "Good. Competition drives up the price, and all proceeds go to charity. Everyone wins." Valente's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Though I have to admit I've developed quite an attachment to that painting myself. Something about the way it captures a ship in a storm. The chaos, the uncertainty, the sense that everything could capsize at any moment. Quite evocative." Adrian's expression remained neutral. "I've always preferred pieces that show control in difficult circumstances. Skill navigating through chaos." "Of course you do." Valente gestured toward the bar. "Enjoy the evening. May the best man win." As they moved away, Emily whispered, "He's definitely planning something." "Undoubtedly, but he tipped his hand mentioning the painting so directly. He wants me to know he's going to drive up the price." Adrian accepted 2 champagne flutes from a passing server, handed one to Emily. "Which means he's either trying to make me waste money, or he wants something else entirely, and the painting is a distraction." Before Emily could respond, a woman's voice interrupted. "Adrian Volkov, it's been too long." Emily turned to see an elegant woman in her 40s, wearing diamonds that probably cost more than Emily's car. She had the kind of beauty that came from good genes and better maintenance, and she looked at Adrian with obvious familiarity. "Isabel," Adrian said, his tone careful. "I didn't know you'd be here. I'm on the foundation board. Of course I'm here." Isabel's eyes swept over Emily with the kind of assessment women give each other at events like this. "And you've brought a date. How unusual." "Isabel Moreau, this is Emily Carter." "Charmed." Isabel's smile was polite and completely insincere. "How did you two meet?" "Through work," Emily said, keeping it vague. "How wonderfully modern." Isabel turned back to Adrian. "I heard about your recent troubles with the Kowalski situation. All resolved now, I trust?" "Completely." "Good. It would be unfortunate if past complications affected tonight's auction." Isabel's smile sharpened. "Especially since Carmine is being so generous with his collection." Adrian's expression didn't change, but Emily felt him tense. "His collection? Oh, didn't you know? The maritime piece you're interested in? It's been in Carmine's private vault for the last 2 years. He's donating it to the auction." Isabel sipped her champagne. "Quite the sacrifice, really. Though I suppose when you have enough wealth, giving up one treasure doesn't matter much." She drifted away, leaving Adrian and Emily standing in the middle of the gallery. "He owns the painting," Emily said quietly. "This whole thing is about making you pay him for something he knows you want." "It's worse than that." Adrian's voice was tight. "If the painting's been in his vault for 2 years, he's had time to research it thoroughly, which means he knows exactly what it's worth and exactly how much I'd be willing to pay. So he drives up the price, and you either pay a fortune or walk away looking like you backed down." "Exactly. Either way, he wins." Adrian pulled out his phone, typing quickly. "I need to verify something." While he worked, Emily watched the crowd. Valente was still holding court, laughing with donors and politicians like a man without a care in the world. Isabel had joined another group, whispering behind her champagne flute while glancing in their direction. Emily hated this world. The false smiles, the calculated conversations, the sense that everyone was playing chess while pretending to play checkers. Victor appeared at Adrian's elbow. "Problem. The painting's provenance documentation has some gaps. My contact at the museum says the ownership trail gets murky around 2010. Adrian's expression went very still. "How murky?" "Murky enough that it might have been stolen property at some point. If you acquire it and that comes to light later, you'd be in possession of stolen goods." Emily's stomach dropped. "So if you bid on it, you're walking into a legal trap." "And if I don't bid, I look weak in front of everyone here." Adrian's voice was level, but Emily could hear the anger underneath. Valente structured this perfectly. Public humiliation either way. The auction was announced, and the crowd moved toward the main gallery where a temporary stage had been set up. Adrian guided Emily to seats near the middle, visible but not front row, a calculated position. The first several items went smoothly. Sculptures, paintings, a vintage wine collection. Emily watched Adrian bid on nothing, his attention focused on the stage with an intensity that made her nervous. Then the maritime painting was brought out. It was beautiful, Emily had to admit. A Dutch merchant ship fighting through a storm, every detail rendered with the kind of precision that marked true mastery. The waves looked almost alive, the ship caught in a moment of desperate navigation. The bidding started at 50,000. Within 2 minutes, it was at 200,000. With only 3 people still in the game, Adrian, Valente, and a tech CEO Emily vaguely recognized. At 300,000, the CEO dropped out. 300,000, the auctioneer called. Do I hear 350? Valente raised his paddle. His eyes were on Adrian, waiting. Adrian didn't move. The silence stretched uncomfortably. Emily could feel people watching, waiting to see what Adrian would do. 350 going once, the auctioneer said. Adrian remained still, going twice. Emily grabbed Adrian's hand under the table, squeezing tight. This was it, the moment where he either walked into Valente's trap or backed down publicly. Adrian stood. The room went silent. I withdraw from bidding, he said clearly, his voice carrying. The provenance on this piece is questionable. I won't participate in the potential acquisition of stolen property, even for charity. The room erupted in whispers. Valente's expression flickered, surprise, then anger, then something calculating. Mr. Volkov, the auctioneer said nervously, are you suggesting? I'm suggesting the ownership history of this painting has significant gaps that should be investigated before it changes hands. I'd be happy to provide documentation to support that concern. Adrian looked directly at Valente. Unless Mr. Valente can provide clear provenance showing legitimate ownership since 2010, Valente's smile was frozen. The piece was authenticated by experts. Authentication confirms age and artist. It doesn't confirm legal ownership. Adrian pulled out his phone, held it up. I have 3 separate sources indicating this painting was reported stolen from a private collection in Amsterdam in 2012. If that's accurate, selling it tonight would make everyone involved complicit in trafficking stolen goods. The whispers became a roar. The auctioneer looked panicked. Valente's face had gone rigid with barely controlled fury. "This is slander," Valente said, his voice sharp. "It's due diligence. If I'm wrong, the documentation will prove it. If I'm right, you just tried to use a charity auction to sell stolen property." Adrian's voice stayed level, almost kind. "Either way, I think we should pause the sale until proper verification can be completed." The museum director appeared, looking like she wanted to disappear. After a hurried consultation with the auctioneer and several board members, she stepped to the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, out of an abundance of caution, we're going to postpone the sale of Lot 17 until we can verify the provenance. The auction will continue with the remaining items." The crowd's attention shifted immediately to the next piece, conversations picking up like nothing had happened. But Emily saw the way people looked at Valente now, uncertain, suspicious, wondering what else he might have tried to slip past them. Adrian had turned Valente's trap into Valente's embarrassment. They left during the next item, Victor and the security team creating a smooth exit that avoided most of the crowd. In the car, Emily finally let out the breath she'd been holding. "That was incredible," she said. "How did you know about the theft?" "I didn't, not for certain." Adrian's smile was sharp, but I knew Valente wouldn't donate a genuinely valuable piece without a reason. So I had my people dig into the ownership history, found the gaps Victor mentioned, and made an educated guess that if the trail was murky, there was probably something illegal hiding in it. "You bluffed." "I made an informed accusation. There's a difference." Adrian's expression sobered. "But now Valente knows I'm willing to burn his reputation in public to protect myself. That changes the game." "Will he retaliate?" "Probably. But tonight wasn't about winning. It was about showing him I'm not an easy target." Adrian reached for Emily's hand. "And showing everyone else that crossing me has consequences." They drove back to the estate in comfortable silence, the city lights sliding past the windows. Emily thought about the evening, about watching Adrian navigate a social battlefield with the same precision he applied to business deals. She'd seen a different side of him tonight, not the protector who'd taken her in, but the strategist who'd built an empire on calculated risks and perfect timing. It should have scared her. Instead, she found it oddly reassuring. Whatever came next, Adrian knew how to fight battles on multiple fronts. She just hoped she was ready for what that would mean. The retaliation came faster than expected. Emily was at the estate library the next afternoon, working through catalogs when Victor appeared looking grim. "Turn on the news." She grabbed the remote, switched to a local station. What she saw made her stomach drop. A reporter stood outside the Sinclair Museum, microphone in hand, looking grave. Behind her, police cars and crime scene tape cordoned off the entrance. The painting in question, a 17th century Dutch maritime piece, was stolen from the museum overnight. Police are reviewing security footage, but early reports suggest this was a professional operation. Adrian Volkov, who questioned the painting's provenance at last night's gala, has not yet commented on the theft. Emily muted the TV. They're going to blame Adrian. They already are. Social media is going crazy with speculation that he arranged the theft to cover up his accusations. Victor crossed his arms. Valente's people are feeding the narrative, making it look like Adrian questioned the painting's legitimacy so he could steal it later. That's insane. That's effective. Victor's phone buzzed. Adrian's on his way back. He wants you to stay here until he arrives. Adrian appeared 20 minutes later, his expression carved from stone. He went straight to his office, Emily and Victor following. "The police want to question me about the theft," Adrian said, pulling up security footage on his computer. "They're calling it voluntary cooperation, but we all know what that means." "Do they have evidence?" Emily asked. "They have timing and motive. I publicly accuse Valente of possessing stolen property. The painting disappears overnight, and now I'm the obvious suspect. Adrian's jaw tightened. It's elegant. Even if they can't prove I did it, the suspicion alone damages my reputation. Emily moved to stand beside him, looking at the footage he'd pulled up. What's that? Security footage from the estate. Every entrance, every exit, time-stamped and archived. Adrian scrolled through the timeline. I can prove I was here all night, that my car never left the property, that no one came or went who shouldn't have. Will that be enough? It should be. But Valente doesn't need me arrested. He just needs me under investigation long enough to disrupt my business operations. Adrian stood, pacing. This is about more than the painting. This is about showing Chicago that I can be touched, that my reputation can be damaged. Victor's phone rang. He answered, listened, then cursed. The painting just showed up. Where? Adrian demanded. Your warehouse on the south side. Anonymous tip to the police. They're executing a search warrant now. Emily felt the world tilt. Someone planted it there. Of course they did. Adrian's voice was ice. Valente steals his own painting, plants it in my property, and calls the cops. I look guilty. He gets insurance money for a stolen piece, and I spend months fighting charges. Can you prove you didn't put it there? Warehouse has security, but it's not as comprehensive as here. If someone had the right access codes, they could get in and out without triggering obvious alarms. Adrian pulled out his phone. I need my lawyers. Now. The next 6 hours were a blur of phone calls and tense waiting. Adrian's lawyers arrived, grim-faced and carrying briefcases full of documentation. Police called requesting Adrian come in for questioning. The lawyers negotiated terms. Through it all, Adrian remained eerily calm, answering questions in measured tones, providing documentation, never showing the fury Emily knew was building underneath. She stayed close, feeling useless but unwilling to leave. At some point, Victor brought food that neither of them ate. Finally, around midnight, Adrian's head lawyer ended a call and turned to them. They're not arresting you, not yet, but they're continuing the investigation, and they've frozen access to the warehouse until they complete their search. How long? Adrian asked. Days, maybe weeks. Adrian nodded, his expression unreadable. After the lawyers left, he sat in his office chair staring at nothing. Emily approached carefully. What are you thinking? I'm thinking Valente just made a serious miscalculation. Adrian's voice was quiet, dangerous. He thinks this makes me look weak, but what it actually does is give me legal cover to tear apart his entire operation looking for proof he set me up. How? Because now this is a police matter, which means I can hire investigators, demand discovery, subpoena records, all the things I couldn't do when it was just business rivalry. Adrian's smile was cold. Valente weaponized the legal system against me. I'm about to do the same to him. Emily sat beside him. This is going to get worse before it gets better, isn't it? Probably. Valente's committed now. He'll keep pushing until one of us breaks. Adrian turned to look at her. Which is why I need to know, are you still willing to be part of this? Because it's going to be ugly and public, and there's no guarantee how it ends. Emily thought about everything that had brought her here, about asking a stranger for help in a desperate moment, about learning to stand up for herself instead of running, about choosing to stay when leaving would have been easier. I'm not going anywhere, she said. We finished this together. Adrian pulled her close, and for a long moment they just sat there. Two people who'd found each other in chaos and decided that was reason enough to fight. Outside, the city hummed with its usual mix of beauty and danger. Somewhere out there, Carmine Valente was probably celebrating what he thought was a victory. He had no idea what was coming for him. And neither, Emily realized, did she. But she knew one thing with absolute certainty. Whatever happened next, she wasn't facing it alone anymore. That had to count for something. The truth started unraveling on a Tuesday morning, 3 weeks after the gala that should have ended everything. Emily was in the estate's library, cataloging a series of photographs Adrian had asked her to examine. Provenance documentation for a collection he was considering acquiring. The work was meticulous, requiring her to cross-reference auction records and historical documents, exactly the kind of detailed analysis that kept her mind occupied. Victor appeared in the doorway, his expression more troubled than she'd seen in weeks. Adrian needs you in his office. Now. The urgency in his voice made Emily's stomach clench. What happened? Just come. Adrian's office looked like a hurricane had hit it. Documents covered every surface. His computer displayed multiple windows of what looked like financial records. And Adrian himself stood at the window with his phone pressed to his ear, his voice low and sharp. I don't care what it costs. Find out who authorized those transfers and when. He ended the call and turned to Emily. We have a problem. What kind of problem? Adrian pulled up an image on his computer, a bank statement with several highlighted transactions. Someone's been moving money through my accounts. Small amounts, carefully hidden in legitimate transfers, but definitely there. You think you're being robbed? I think I'm being framed. He pulled up another document, an invoice for a shipment Emily didn't recognize. These are orders I never placed, using my credentials, my authorization codes. Someone's creating a paper trail that makes it look like I'm trafficking stolen goods. Emily's chest tightened. The painting from the gala? That's what they want people to think. That I didn't just acquire it legitimately, I'm part of a larger smuggling operation. Adrian's jaw was tight. It's sophisticated. Whoever's doing this knows exactly how to make it look credible. Carmine Valente? That would be too obvious. This is cleaner than his usual work. Adrian sat heavily in his chair. But it's definitely connected to him. The timing is too precise to be coincidental. Victor spoke from the doorway. I've been going through security footage. Someone accessed your office here at the estate 2 weeks ago. 3 a.m. They knew exactly where the cameras were positioned. Inside job, Adrian said flatly. Has to be. No one gets past our security without help. Emily watched Adrian's expression shift, the careful control slipping for just a moment to show something colder underneath. Who has access to this office, besides you and me? 5 people. All of them vetted. All of them loyal. Victor's voice was tight. Or so I thought. Check them anyway. Bank records, communications, travel history. I want to know if any of them suddenly came into money they can't explain. After Victor left, Emily moved closer to Adrian's desk. What happens if they find evidence? Then we have a traitor in my organization, and I deal with it accordingly. And if the framing works, if people believe you're smuggling, Adrian met her eyes. Then everything I've built collapses. My reputation, my business, my ability to protect anyone, including you. That's what they're counting on. The weight of it settled over Emily like a shroud. She'd been so focused on her own problems, on Ryan and the stalking and the fear, that she hadn't considered what it cost Adrian to help her, the attention it drew, the vulnerabilities it exposed. This is my fault, she said quietly. If I hadn't asked for help that night, Stop! Adrian's voice was sharp. You didn't create this situation. You interrupted a meeting, asked for help, and I chose to give it. Everything that followed was my decision. But if Valente is doing this to get to you through me, then he made a miscalculation. Because I don't abandon people under my protection no matter what pressure gets applied. Adrian stood, moving to stand beside her. The question isn't whether I regret helping you. The question is how we prove I'm being framed before the damage becomes permanent. Emily thought about the painting, about the documents she'd been examining all morning. The provenance records? If someone's creating a fake trail, there would be inconsistencies, things that don't match the legitimate documentation. I have people checking that. Do they know art history? Do they know what to look for in authentication records? Adrian paused. No. They know finances and legal documentation. Then let me help. This is what I do. Examine evidence, trace ownership, find the truth in the details. Emily gestured toward the library. If there's a fake trail, I can find where it diverges from reality. For a long moment, Adrian just looked at her. Then he nodded. Victor will get you everything we have. Find the inconsistencies. Emily spent the next 6 hours buried in documents. Shipping manifests, auction records, authentication certificates, financial transfers, a massive web of transactions that should have told a coherent story but didn't quite fit together. The first red flag was subtle. A shipping date that predated the auction where the item was supposedly acquired. Small enough to miss if you weren't looking carefully, but definitive proof that someone had fabricated the record. The second was more obvious once she knew what to look for. An authentication certificate signed by an expert who'd retired 5 years before the document was dated. By midnight, Emily had identified 7 separate fabrications in what should have been legitimate provenance documentation. Someone had created an entire false history for multiple items, all designed to make it look like Adrian was knowingly trafficking stolen art. She brought her findings to Adrian, who was still in his office despite the late hour, surrounded by his own investigation. Look at this. Emily spread out the documents she'd marked. These 3 paintings supposedly came from a private collection in Prague, but the collection was sold off in 2019, 2 years before these acquisition dates. And this authentication here, it's signed by Marcus Chen, who died in 2021. These documents are all fake. Adrian leaned forward, studying her work. Can you prove it? I can show the inconsistencies. Whether that's enough to prove someone deliberately fabricated them, I don't know. It's a start. Adrian pulled out his phone, typing rapidly. I'm sending this to my lawyers. If we can prove the provenance documents are false, we can argue the entire case against me is manufactured. There's something else. Emily hesitated. The fabrications are good. Whoever made these knew exactly what legitimate documentation looks like. They have access to the right databases, the right contacts, the right knowledge. Your point? My point is, this wasn't done by some random forger. This was done by someone in the art world, someone with credentials and connections. Adrian's expression darkened. Someone like the people Valente introduced me to at the gala, maybe. Or someone already in your network who got turned. Emily thought about the careful way the documents had been constructed. Whoever did this wanted to make you look guilty without making it obvious the evidence was planted. That takes skill and inside knowledge. Before Adrian could respond, Victor burst into the office. Found him, Thomas Riley, one of your junior security guys. 24 hours ago, he deposited $15,000 cash into his account. When I asked him about it, he ran. Where is he now? We're tracking him. He's heading south, probably trying to cross into Indiana. Adrian stood. Bring him back. I want to know who paid him and what he gave them. Victor left, and Emily found herself alone with Adrian in the quiet office. Outside, the estate grounds were dark, except for security lights marking the perimeter. You should get some sleep, Adrian said. This is going to be a long night. I'm not tired. You're exhausted. I can see it. Adrian's voice was gentler than usual. Go rest. I'll let you know when we have Riley. Emily should have argued, should have insisted on staying. But the adrenaline that had carried her through the day was fading, leaving only bone-deep weariness. She made it to her room before the shaking started. The full weight of what they were facing crashed over her. Adrian being framed, a traitor in his organization, Valente still out there planning his next move, and Ryan somewhere in the city waiting for his next opportunity. Too many enemies, too many angles of attack. She was sitting on the edge of her bed trying to steady her breathing when her phone rang. Unknown number. Against her better judgment, she answered. Emily Carter? A woman's voice, unfamiliar. My name is Julia Hammond. I'm an investigative journalist with the Tribune. I'd like to ask you some questions about your relationship with Adrian Volkov. Emily's blood went cold. How did you get this number? I have sources. Miss Carter, I'm working on a story about Mr. Volkov's business practices. I understand you've been staying at his estate for several weeks. Can you comment on the nature of your relationship? No comment. I also understand you were present at the Sinclair Gala 3 weeks ago when Mr. Volkov acquired a painting that's now at the center of a smuggling investigation. Were you aware of the painting's questionable provenance? I'm not discussing this with you. Ms. Carter, if you're being coerced or held against your will... Emily hung up, her hands shaking. Before she could process what had just happened, Adrian appeared in her doorway. Julia Hammond just called you, he said. It wasn't a question. How did you know? Because she called me 5 minutes before that. And my lawyers, and the police, and apparently half the city. Adrian's expression was grim. Someone leaked the investigation to the press. By morning, this will be front-page news. What do we do? We get ahead of it, control the narrative before Valente's version becomes the accepted truth. Adrian pulled out his phone. I'm calling a press conference for tomorrow. If I'm going to be accused in public, I'm defending myself in public. Is that smart? Won't that just draw more attention? The attention's already here. Now we decide what people see. Adrian met her eyes. But I need to know. Are you willing to stand beside me when I do this? Because the questions won't just be about me. They'll be about you, about why you're here, about our relationship. Emily thought about the journalist's questions, about how quickly speculation would turn ugly. What do you want me to say? The truth. That I helped you when you needed it, and you're helping me now. That whatever relationship we have is built on mutual respect and choice. Adrian's voice was steady. But if you'd rather stay out of it, I understand. This isn't your fight. Yes, it is. The words came out stronger than Emily expected. Valente came after you because you helped me. Ryan's still out there because you protected me. Everything that's happening is connected to me being here. So yes, I'll stand beside you. Something shifted in Adrian's expression. Relief, maybe, or respect. Tomorrow morning, then, 8 a.m. We make our case. The press conference was held in the ballroom of a downtown hotel, cameras and reporters packed into every available space. Adrian had dressed in a perfectly tailored suit, projecting controlled authority. Emily wore a simple dress Victor had somehow acquired in her size, looking professional and composed even though her stomach churned. Adrian spoke first, his statement carefully crafted by lawyers who'd worked through the night. He acknowledged the investigation, denied any wrongdoing, and presented evidence of fabricated documents. He named Carmine Valente as the likely source of the frame job, laying out the timeline from the gala confrontation to the planted evidence. Then he introduced Emily. Ms. Carter is an art restoration specialist who's been consulting on authentication issues related to this investigation, Adrian said, the lie smooth and practiced. She's identified multiple inconsistencies in the provenance documentation that prove the records were falsified. Emily stepped forward, her prepared notes trembling slightly in her hands. She explained the technical aspects, the impossible dates, the forged signatures, the historical inconsistencies. She made it sound professional and detached, like she was just an expert doing her job. The questions came fast and pointed. Ms. Carter, how long have you been working with Mr. Volkov? Several weeks? And you're currently residing at his estate? Yes. In what capacity? Emily felt Adrian tense beside her. This was the question they'd prepared for, the one designed to make their relationship sound improper. Mr. Volkov has provided security consultation while I deal with an unrelated personal matter, she said carefully. That arrangement has no bearing on my professional assessment of the documents in question. What personal matter requires you to live at his estate? That's not relevant to today's discussion, isn't it? You're asking us to trust your professional judgment while you're personally involved with the man you're defending. Adrian stepped forward. Ms. Carter's personal life is not on trial here. The evidence speaks for itself. Documents were fabricated, records were falsified, and someone went to significant effort to make me look guilty of crimes I didn't commit. That's the story. But the damage was already done. Emily could see it in the reporters' faces, hear it in the whispered conversations. By tomorrow, the headlines wouldn't be about fabricated evidence. They'd be about Adrian Volkov's mysterious live-in girlfriend defending him from criminal charges. After the conference ended, Adrian guided Emily out through a back exit where Victor waited with the car. That went about as well as expected, Adrian said once they were moving. They think I'm lying for you. Some do. Others will actually look at the evidence. Adrian's phone buzzed constantly with messages he ignored. My lawyers are already filing motions based on your findings. Whether public opinion believes me doesn't matter as much as what the courts believe. It matters for your reputation. My reputation was built on being someone people fear and respect. A smuggling accusation doesn't change that. Adrian finally looked at his phone, his expression darkening. But this might. He turned the screen toward her. A news article, already published online. The headline read, Volkov's Mystery Woman. Art expert or accomplice? Below it, a photo of Emily and Adrian at the press conference, standing close together, looking for all the world like a couple presenting a united front. And beneath that, a smaller photo. Emily and Ryan from their dating days, smiling and happy. The article connected every dot in the worst possible way. Emily's relationship with Ryan, his assault charges, her sudden appearance in Adrian's life, the convenient timing of her expertise with the fabricated documents. They're making it look like I'm running from one criminal to another, Emily said, her voice hollow. They're making it look like you're complicit in my supposed crimes. Adrian's jaw was tight. Valente's people must have fed them the story. They've been planning this. Emily's phone started ringing. Sarah, then her parents, then numbers she didn't recognize. Don't answer, Adrian said. Not until we know what we're dealing with. But Emily already knew what they were dealing with. Her name was now permanently linked to Adrian Volkov in the public record. Whether the charges stuck or not, whether they proved the frame job or not, she would always be that woman who defended the mobster. Her career, her reputation, her quiet life restoring art and peaceful obscurity, all of it was burning down around her. I'm sorry, Adrian said quietly. I should have anticipated they'd come after you. You tried to keep me out of it. Not hard enough. They spent the rest of the drive in silence, Emily watching the city pass by while her phone continued its relentless buzzing. By the time they reached the estate, there were already news vans parked outside the gates. Victor cursed under his breath. They're like vultures. They're doing their jobs, Adrian said. Badly, but still. He turned to Emily. I'm having Victor take you to a secondary property. Somewhere the press doesn't know about. You'll be safe there until this dies down. I'm not running away again. You're not running. You're strategically relocating while I handle the media circus. No? Emily surprised herself with her certainty. I stood beside you at that press conference. I'm not hiding now like I was ashamed of it. Emily, you told me this morning that you don't abandon people under your protection. Well, I don't abandon people who protected me. We're in this together now, whether Valente likes it or not. Adrian studied her face, and Emily wondered what he saw there. Fear, probably. Stubborn determination, definitely. Maybe something else she wasn't ready to name. Together, he finally said, but on one condition. What? You let me teach you how to handle the press properly. Because that performance today was brave but sloppy, and next time they'll eat you alive if you're not prepared. Despite everything, Emily almost smiled. Deal. They made it through the gates just as the news van's cameras started rolling, capturing the moment Adrian Volkov and his mysterious art expert disappeared behind walls that kept the rest of the world firmly outside. Inside those walls, Emily finally let herself acknowledge what she'd been avoiding for weeks. This wasn't temporary anymore. This wasn't just about surviving Ryan or clearing Adrian's name. This was about choosing a side in a war she barely understood, about tying her fate to a man whose world operated by rules she'd never learned. And somewhere in all of it, it had stopped being about survival and started being about something else entirely. She just wasn't ready to admit what that something was. Not yet. Not when everything was still burning down around them. The breakthrough came from the last place Emily expected, Ryan Bennett's lawyer. It was late afternoon, 4 days after the press conference that had turned Emily's life into a media spectacle. She was in the estate's library, trying to focus on restoration catalogs while ignoring the constant buzz of her silenced phone, when Adrian appeared with an expression she couldn't quite read. Jonathan Reeves just called me, he said without preamble. Emily looked up from her work. Ryan's lawyer? Why would he call you? Because Ryan violated his restraining order again last night. Showed up at your old apartment building, tried to force his way past security. They have him on camera threatening to burn the whole place down if you didn't come talk to him. Emily's hands went cold. Is anyone hurt? No. Building security called the police before he could do anything. He's in custody now. Bail revoked. Adrian sat across from her. But that's not why Reeves called. He called because he's withdrawing as Ryan's attorney. In the middle of a case? Apparently Ryan assaulted him during a consultation this morning. Reeves was explaining that the new charges meant Ryan was likely going to prison regardless of how the stalking case played out, and Ryan didn't take it well. Adrian pulled out his phone, showed her a news article. Broke Reeves' nose. Security had to pull him off. Emily stared at the photo of Jonathan Reeves leaving a hospital, his face bruised and bandaged. He's completely lost control. That's Reeves' assessment too, which is why he called me. He thinks Ryan's going to come after you directly now that legal options are exhausted. No more restraining orders or lawyers or family intervention. Just Ryan and whatever he's planning. The fear Emily had been managing for weeks crystallized into something sharper. Where is he now? County lockup, but his uncle is trying to post bail again. Can he do that after what Ryan just did? Money talks, especially Bennett family money. Adrian's expression was grim, which is why we need to end this today. Before Ryan gets another chance. Emily met his eyes. What are you planning? The same thing I've been planning since Reeves called. I'm going to visit Ryan Bennett in jail and make him an offer he'd be stupid to refuse. What kind of offer? Adrian stood, buttoning his jacket with practiced precision. The kind that makes him disappear from your life permanently without anyone having to die. Come with me. I want you to hear what I'm going to say to him. The county jail was exactly as depressing as Emily imagined. Fluorescent lights, concrete walls, and the particular smell of too many people living in too little space. Adrian had somehow arranged a private meeting room, the kind usually reserved for lawyers and their clients. Ryan was brought in wearing an orange jumpsuit, his hands cuffed, his face showing the strain of the last few days. When he saw Emily, something flickered in his eyes. Hope, maybe, or calculation. Then he saw Adrian, and the hope died. "What is this?" Ryan demanded. "I didn't agree to talk to you." "Sit down, Mr. Bennett." Adrian's voice carried the weight of someone who expected to be obeyed. "Your lawyer abandoned you this morning, your family is reconsidering their support, and you're facing assault charges on top of everything else. I'm here to offer you a way out." Ryan remained standing. "I don't want anything from you." "Then you're stupider than I thought. Sit down." Something in Adrian's tone made Ryan comply, though his jaw stayed tight with resentment. Adrian slid a folder across the table. "These are the charges currently pending against you: stalking, assault, terroristic threats, violation of a restraining order, and as of this morning, assault on your attorney. You're looking at 5 to 7 years minimum, and that's if you get a sympathetic judge." "My family has lawyers. Your family is tired of cleaning up your messes. Your uncle told you that himself before you broke Jonathan Reeves's face." Adrian opened the folder, revealing documentation Emily recognized from weeks of accumulated evidence. "But here's what interests me. You have a trust fund worth approximately $3 million, accessible when you turn 30. That's in 8 months. Ryan's expression shifted to confusion. "What does that have to do with anything?" "I'm offering you a choice. You sign over power of attorney for that trust fund to a third-party administrator I designate. That administrator will ensure the money gets invested properly, grows conservatively, and becomes available to you under very specific conditions." "What conditions?" "You plead guilty to the stalking and restraining order violations. You accept a sentence of 18 months, serve your time quietly, and when you're released, you leave Chicago permanently. Move to another state, start over with a clean slate. The trust fund will provide you an income of approximately $60,000 a year for the rest of your life, paid monthly, as long as you stay away from Illinois and have no contact with Emily Carter." Ryan stared at him. "You want me to plead guilty and leave town in exchange for my own money? I want you to accept consequences for your actions in exchange for financial security and a second chance you don't deserve." Adrian's voice was level, almost kind. "The alternative is you fight these charges, burn through your family's patience and money, probably get convicted anyway, and come out of prison broke and unemployable with Emily still living in your head rent-free. This is extortion. This is mathematics. You've proven you can't be trusted with freedom or money. I'm offering you a way to have both under supervision that keeps everyone safe." Adrian glanced at Emily. "Including you." Emily had stayed silent until now, but Ryan's eyes were on her, searching for something. Sympathy, maybe, or an opening. "You're really going to let him do this?" Ryan asked. "Control my life? Decide my future?" "You tried to burn down my apartment building," Emily said quietly. "You broke into my home with zip ties. You stalked me for months and refused to accept that I didn't want to be with you. So yes, I'm going to let him offer you a choice that means I never have to see you or think about you again." "I loved you." "No, you didn't. You loved controlling me. And when you couldn't anymore, you tried to destroy me." Emily felt years of fear and frustration crystallizing into clarity. "Love doesn't look like what you did, Ryan. It never did." Ryan's face crumpled, and for just a moment he looked like what he was. A broken man who'd confused possession with affection and couldn't understand why that distinction mattered. "What if I say no?" he finally asked. "Then you go to trial, you probably lose, and you spend the next 5 to 7 years in prison while your trust fund sits untouched and your family moves on without you." Adrian stood. "You have 24 hours to decide. After that, the offer expires and you're on your own." They left Ryan sitting in the meeting room, staring at the folder like it contained his entire future. Which, Emily supposed, it did. Outside in the parking lot, Emily finally let herself process what had just happened. Will he take it? Yes, he's angry and desperate, but he's not stupid. 18 months versus 5 to 7 years with guaranteed income waiting versus nothing? He'll take it. Adrian unlocked his car. And if he doesn't, we have enough evidence to bury him anyway. But this way is cleaner. You're giving him a second chance. I'm removing him as a threat while acknowledging he's still human. There's a difference. Adrian paused before getting in the car. People like Ryan don't change, Emily, but they can be managed, contained, given incentives to stay away from the people they've hurt. That's the best we can do. Emily thought about that as they drove back through Chicago streets that had started to feel familiar again. Adrian wasn't saving Ryan or redeeming him. He was just making it more profitable for Ryan to be someone else's problem. It was practical, ruthless, and probably the only solution that didn't end with someone in the ground. "Thank you," Emily said. Adrian glanced at her. "For what?" "For finding a way that wasn't option 3. Something shifted in his expression. Relief, maybe, or respect. "You made that choice weeks ago. I'm just following through." The real bombshell came 2 days later, delivered by Victor with the kind of grim satisfaction that meant bad news for someone. "Thomas Riley talked," Victor announced, dropping a thick file on Adrian's desk. "Told us everything about who hired him and what he was paid to do." Adrian opened the file, Emily reading over his shoulder. What she saw made her stomach drop. Thomas Riley had been paid $50,000 to plant evidence in Adrian's office, create false digital trails, and provide Carmine Valente's people with access to secured files. But the person who'd paid him wasn't Valente. It was Marcus Delacroix, the nervous businessman from the Velvet Room, the one whose debt Adrian had been settling the night Emily first asked for help. "Marcus?" Emily couldn't process it. "Why would he betray you?" "Because Valente approached him after our meeting and offered him a way out of his debts entirely. All Marcus had to do was help frame me for smuggling." Adrian's voice was dangerously calm. "He recruited Riley, provided the authentication documents Emily identified as fake, and coordinated with Valente's people to leak everything to the press at exactly the right moment." Victor pulled out another document. "Delacroix has been working with Valente for 6 weeks, since before the gala. They've been planning this whole thing." Emily felt the pieces clicking into place. "The painting at the gala. Valente didn't just want it for himself, he wanted you to acquire it so he could use it as evidence you were trafficking stolen art. And I walked right into it." Adrian's expression was carved from ice. "I took the bait because I was distracted protecting you and didn't see the larger trap being set." "Don't!" Emily's voice was sharp. "Don't blame this on helping me. Valente was coming after you regardless. I just gave him a convenient timeline." Adrian looked at her for a long moment. Then he nodded, some of the tension leaving his shoulders. "You're right. Valente's been planning this for months. You were just the catalyst that accelerated his schedule." "So what do we do now?" "Now we prove it. All of it. Riley's testimony, the money trail from Valente to Delacroix, the fabricated documents. We take everything to the prosecutor, and we make sure both of them face consequences." Adrian's smile was cold enough to freeze. "And then I make sure everyone in Chicago knows exactly what happens when you betray my trust." The next week moved with the kind of focused intensity Emily had come to associate with Adrian in crisis mode. Lawyers filed motions. Police conducted interviews. Forensic accountants traced money through accounts designed to hide it. And slowly, methodically, the truth emerged from under layers of deception. Marcus Delacroix had been drowning in debt, not just to the Kowalski crew Adrian had paid off, but to 3 other organizations whose patience was expiring. Carmine Valente had offered him a lifeline, helped destroy Adrian Volkov, and all debts would be forgiven, plus a bonus payment large enough to start over somewhere new. Marcus had been desperate enough to take it. The authentication documents Emily had identified as fake? Provided by one of Valente's contacts in the art world, someone with enough expertise to make them almost credible. The financial records showing suspicious transfers, created by Thomas Riley using access Marcus had given him to Adrian's systems. The tip to the press? Coordinated between Marcus and Valente to hit at exactly the moment that would cause maximum damage. It had been elegant, sophisticated, and almost successful. Almost. Emily was present when the prosecutor announced that charges against Adrian were being dropped, and new charges were being filed against Marcus Delacroix and Carmine Valente. She watched Adrian's face as the announcement was made, looking for satisfaction or triumph. Instead, she saw exhaustion. That night, back at the estate after the press had been managed and the statements had been given, Adrian sat in his office with a glass of bourbon he wasn't drinking. Emily found him there, staring out the window at grounds lit by security lights. "You should be celebrating," she said. "Should I?" Adrian's voice was flat. "I trusted Marcus. I helped him when he asked. And he repaid that by trying to destroy everything I built. He was desperate. We're all desperate sometimes. That doesn't excuse betrayal." Adrian finally took a drink. "I knew Valente was dangerous. I knew he'd come after me eventually. But I didn't expect it to come from inside my own network." Emily sat across from him, and for the first time since they'd met, she felt like she was seeing past the careful control to something more vulnerable underneath. "You can't protect everyone," she said quietly. "And you can't predict every betrayal. You did everything right, Adrian. You found the truth, you proved your innocence, and you made sure the people responsible faced consequences. That's all anyone can do." Is it enough? It has to be. Because the alternative is never trusting anyone, never helping anyone, and living behind walls that keep out the threats, but also keep out everything that makes life worth living. Emily thought about her own journey, about asking a stranger for help in a desperate moment. "I trusted you when I had no reason to. You could have been another Ryan, another person who wanted to control me. But you weren't. You gave me choices and protection and the space to be myself. That matters more than you know." Adrian looked at her then, really looked at her, and Emily saw something shift in his expression. "You were supposed to be temporary, a favor to someone who needed help, nothing more." "I know. But somewhere in the last few weeks that changed." Emily's heart stuttered. "Changed how?" Adrian set down his glass and moved to stand beside her. "I've built my entire life on control, on managing every variable, anticipating every threat, never letting anyone close enough to become a vulnerability. And then you stumbled into my booth asking for help, and suddenly all those carefully constructed walls didn't seem as important." "Adrian, I'm not good at this," he continued, his voice rougher than usual. "I don't know how to be someone who cares about another person without trying to control them. I don't know how to separate protection from possession, but I want to try. With you. If you're willing to be patient while I figure it out." Emily stood, closing the distance between them. "I'm not looking for perfect. I'm looking for honest. For someone who sees me as a person, not a problem to solve or a possession to keep. Can you teach me the difference?" "I think we teach each other." Emily reached for his hand, felt him grip hers like it was anchoring him. "You taught me I'm allowed to ask for help, that needing protection doesn't make me weak. I can teach you that caring about someone doesn't mean controlling them." Adrian pulled her closer, his other hand coming up to cup her face with a gentleness that contradicted everything his reputation suggested he was capable of. "I'm going to make mistakes. So am I. I come with complications most people wouldn't accept. And I come with an ex who tried to burn down buildings and trauma I'm still processing. We're both works in progress." Adrian smiled then, a real smile that transformed his entire face. "Works in progress. I can live with that." When he kissed her, it wasn't the desperate collision Emily had imagined in weaker moments. It was careful and questioning, giving her space to pull away if she wanted, waiting for her to choose. Emily chose to stay. They spent the next hour talking through logistics and boundaries, about what a relationship between them might actually look like beyond crisis management and shared enemies. Adrian offered to reduce her security detail now that Ryan was accepting the plea deal and leaving Chicago. Emily countered that she'd like Victor to stay on, at least until she felt comfortable going places alone again. Adrian promised to consult her before making decisions that affected her life. Emily promised to tell him when his protective instincts crossed into controlling territory. They negotiated like two people who'd learned the hard way that assumptions led to disaster, spelling out expectations and fears with the kind of honesty neither of them had practiced before. It wasn't romantic in any traditional sense, but it was real. And after weeks of manipulation and lies from too many directions, real was exactly what Emily needed. The final piece fell into place 2 weeks later when Ryan Bennett accepted Adrian's offer. Guilty plea, 18 months, permanent relocation after release, and the trust fund arrangement that would keep him financially stable as long as he stayed away. Emily didn't attend the sentencing. She'd said everything she needed to say in that jail meeting room. Instead, she was at her studio, back to work full-time, restoring a 17th century portrait that had been damaged in a fire. Sarah appeared at her workstation around noon with coffee and the kind of expression that meant she had questions. "So," Sarah said, drawing out the word, "you and Adrian Volkov." Emily didn't look up from her work. "Me and Adrian Volkov? That's really happening? Like, officially happening?" "We're seeing where it goes." "Emily, he's not exactly a seeing where it goes kind of guy." "Then maybe I'm teaching him to be." Emily finally met her friend's eyes. "I know what you're thinking, that I jumped from one dangerous relationship into another, that Adrian's just a different version of control and manipulation." "Is he?" Emily thought about the question seriously. "No, he's someone who's used to having power and doesn't always know the difference between protection and possession. But he's learning. We both are. And if he can't learn, if he turns out to be just as controlling as Ryan, then I leave. I know what that looks like now. I know the warning signs, the red flags, the patterns, and I know I'm strong enough to walk away." Emily returned to her painting. "But I also know what real protection looks like. What it means when someone gives you choices instead of ultimatums. Adrian did that, even when it cost him." Sarah was quiet for a moment. Then she smiled. "Okay, but if he ever makes you feel like Ryan did, you tell me. I'll help you hide the body." Emily laughed, surprising herself with how good it felt. "Deal." That evening, Adrian picked her up from the studio. Victor drove them to a restaurant Emily had mentioned wanting to try months ago. The kind of detail Adrian had apparently filed away and remembered. Over dinner, they talked about Emily's work, about a new collection Adrian was considering, about the upcoming trial for Marcus Delacroix and Carmine Valente. They talked like two people getting to know each other without the pressure of crisis forcing intimacy. After dinner, Adrian drove them to the lakefront, where the city lights reflected off water and the world felt bigger than their individual problems. "I got an offer this week," Emily said. "The Art Institute wants me to consult on their restoration program. It's a significant position, good money, a chance to work with pieces I've only read about. Are you going to take it?" "I'm thinking about it. It would mean less time at the studio, more public profile. I wasn't sure I wanted that after everything with the press." Adrian was quiet for a moment. "The press was brutal because they smelled scandal. But the scandal's over now. You proved your expertise, cleared my name with your analysis, and showed everyone you're more than just Volkov's mystery woman. If you want the position, take it. Don't let other people's misconceptions limit your choices." Emily looked at him, this man who'd upended her life in the best and worst ways, who'd protected her and challenged her, and forced her to recognize her own strength. "What about us?" she asked. "How does this work if I'm more public, if people know we're together?" "We decide what we share and what we keep private. We set boundaries about what's acceptable and what's not. We deal with complications as they come instead of avoiding them." Adrian reached for her hand. "I spent too many years isolating myself because it was safer. I'm done with safe if it means I'm alone." Emily squeezed his hand. "I'm taking the position." "Good. You've earned it." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the lake and the city beyond, two people who'd found each other in chaos and decided to build something deliberate in its aftermath. 3 months later, Emily moved out of Adrian's estate and into her own apartment, a better one than she'd had before, in a building with actual security and windows that didn't face alleyways. Adrian had offered to pay for it, and Emily had refused until they'd negotiated a loan arrangement with actual interest and repayment terms. It was important to her that she maintain her independence, that their relationship exist on equal footing rather than him providing while she accepted. Adrian had understood, even when it clearly frustrated his instinct to simply solve problems with money. Victor helped her move, which mostly meant he directed the actual movers while making sure Emily didn't lift anything heavier than a lamp. Some things, apparently, were non-negotiable. Ryan Bennett was serving his sentence quietly at a minimum security facility downstate. Emily received monthly updates from the administrator managing his trust fund, confirming he hadn't violated any terms of their agreement. After release, he'd be relocating to Arizona, far enough away that Emily could finally stop looking over her shoulder. Carmine Valente and Marcus Delacroix were both awaiting trial on multiple charges. Valente's organization was fracturing without his leadership, and Adrian had quietly absorbed several of his operations in ways Emily didn't ask about, and he didn't volunteer. Some parts of his world she'd accepted she would never fully understand, and that had to be okay. 6 months after that stormy night in the Velvet Room, Emily found herself back there for the first time. Adrian had suggested dinner, and she'd agreed, curious to see the place where everything had started. They sat in the same booth where she'd stumbled into his meeting, desperate and afraid, and asking a stranger for help she had no right to expect. "Do you remember what you said to me that night?" Emily asked. Adrian smiled. "I said several things. You said I was either brave or desperate. Either way, don't waste it. And you didn't. You asked for what you needed, stood your ground when it mattered, and refused to let fear make you someone you weren't." Adrian reached across the table. "You saved yourself, Emily. I just provided resources. You provided more than that. You provided choices when I thought I didn't have any. You showed me what protection looks like when it comes from respect instead of control. And you showed me that trusting someone doesn't make me weak, that caring about someone's choices matters more than making all the choices for them." Adrian's thumb traced circles on her hand. "We're good for each other, even when it's complicated. Especially when it's complicated." The piano player began a familiar tune, the same slow, smoky melody that had been playing the night they danced. Adrian stood, extending his hand. "Dance with me?" Emily took his hand and let him guide her to the small dance floor. This time there was no fear driving them together, no desperate need for protection or escape. Just two people who'd chosen each other after seeing the worst and best of what they were capable of. "No danger this time," Emily observed. "No, just us." "Is that enough?" Adrian pulled her closer. "It's everything." They danced in the low light of the velvet room, surrounded by other people living their own complicated lives, making their own difficult choices. The city beyond the windows was still dangerous and beautiful and unforgiving. Emily had learned she was strong enough to survive it. Adrian had learned he didn't have to face it alone. Together, they'd learned that trust wasn't about perfection or promises that everything would work out. It was about choosing to show up honestly, day after day, with all your flaws and fears and complicated history. It was about finding someone who saw you clearly and chose you anyway. As the song ended and a new one began, neither of them stepped away. They stayed there on the dance floor, building something that looked like a future out of honesty and choice, and the hard-won knowledge that love, real love, was about freedom, not possession. In a city built on power and deals and carefully constructed facades, they'd created something rare. They'd created something real. And that, Emily thought, as Adrian held her close, was worth every risk she'd taken to find it.